Hi, I'm going to read you chapter 9 of The Iron Dragon Never Sleeps. Jeff just came by with the lawnmower, so I have to start over because I don't think you could have heard me reading over the lawnmower. Anyhow, chapter 9, here we go. Early Monday morning, the Celestials all returned to work. The strike had lasted only a week, but it had been 7 long days for everyone concerned. As Eli Tucker had predicted, few of the Chinese demands were met. They received another $2 a month for their trouble, but nothing else changed. The weeks passed quickly after the strike was settled. On some mornings, Winnie found ice already creeping around the edge of the snow ponds, and the squirrels began to gather nuts constantly, except when afternoon rains pelted the ground like hail. Winnie saw even less of her father than before. He was almost always busy. The strike had cost the railroad time. The loss was a luxury they could not afford. "We're cutting a fair number of corners," Eli remarked more than once at dinner. "You must be careful," said Marjorie. "It is dangerous digging in the tunnel." "Is it dangerous?" Winnie asked. Her father paused. "The railroad doesn't think so," he said, and he was silent after that. One late afternoon, Winnie and her mother went to pick up her father on the mountain. The buckboard clattered along the bumpy dirt road. The ride rattled Winnie's teeth. "I wish Papa didn't work late so often," she said. "It is not his choice," said her mother. "The railroad's in an awful hurry." I know. I don't think the Celestials even get time to breathe." "How is Lee, by the way?" asked her mother. "Eating better, I hope?" Winnie glanced at her mother but kept her face forward, so her mom knows that she was feeding him during the strike, right? Moms always kind of know things like that. Winnie glanced at her mother, but she kept her face forward. "I haven't talked to him lately," said Winnie. "I've seen him passing at times. He always looks tired." She paused. "Isn't that Flapjack over there?" It was. The old miner waved to them from the far side of a meadow. They stopped the wagon. Flapjack hobbled over. "I twisted my ankle," he said. "Stepped in a gopher hole." "What are you doing up here?" Winnie asked. "Sometimes even Cisco seems a bit crowded," he replied. "I was getting some air." "We can give you a ride back to town," said Marjorie, "but first we have to pick up Eli." "I'm a rich man where time is concerned," said Flapjack. "As long as I can sit down, I'll be fine." Winnie moved into the back of the wagon to make room for Flapjack up front. He settled in and they continued on their way. Their route followed the train tracks heading for Donner Lake. Much of the track was not visible, though. It was covered by half-completed wooden sheds. "Look how they're covering up the tracks," said Winnie. "I wonder why." Sometimes in the Sierras, if you've driven through the Sierra Nevada mountains, you'll see where the train tracks are, and you'll see that there are wooden covers. There's sort of wooden planks that wrap around the railroad tracks, and that's because of the snowfall is so high up in the mountains that if snow lands on the train tracks, then the train gets stuck, right? The train has to push through the snow, and it's really difficult for trains to do that. Usually they have those cattle guards on the front to make the train pointy, right? So the train has to push through the snow, and it's difficult to do. So they started building these wooden sheds that covered over the railroad tracks up in the mountains. Let's see. It was covered with half-completed wooden sheds. "Look how they're covering up the tracks," said Winnie. "I wonder why." Her mother smiled. "Those are snow sheds." "Snow sheds? To keep the track from getting covered with snow in the winter. Can't they just plow the snow off?" Winnie asked. Her mother shook her head. "Not always. Last winter your father told me it took 5 locomotives to push one plow through a 15-foot drift. And even at that, the plow couldn't always get through. So the railroad is building these snow sheds to keep the tracks clear." "Look!" cried Flapjack. They could see fire and smoke rising from the mountain ahead. "It's like a volcano," said Winnie. She had never seen one in person, but she had seen pictures in a book. Mrs. Tucker pulled the buggy to a halt. Thunderous explosions were shaking the air. Tons of rocks and dirt were shooting skyward. The sound echoed down the canyons like a string of firecrackers. "What's going on?" asked Mrs. Tucker. "They're hurrying the blasts in before sunset," said Flapjack. "Whoa!" said Mrs. Tucker, steadying their horse. Suddenly the blast stopped. Flapjack frowned. "Now that's odd," he said. "They don't usually stop all at once like that." Generally, one spot or another needs clearing up, Unless what? Asked Winnie. Flapjack didn't answer. Someone's coming, said Winnie. And fast, said her mother. A moment later, a rider came cantering around the bend. What's wrong? Flapjack shouted. Been an accident, said the rider as he went by. Gotta go fetch the doctor. And then he was gone. Winnie and her mother shared a worried glance. Giddy up there, said Marjorie. So that's the end of the chapter. So there's been some kind of accident, and there's at least two people that they don't want to be harmed in the accident, right? Their father, and also Lee is probably working there too. So she's worried about Lee. All right. I will read you the next chapter later. Here comes the lawnmower again. Bye.